Hello, and welcome back to Reading with Mo. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that I have been seeing all around the bookish sphere lately, and just a big trend online, not even within books, but we've been doing a lot of reflecting back on the year 2016. And I wanted to take some time to reflect on 2016 as a reading year for myself personally. I thought it would be fun to look back and see what books did I read in 2016? The thing is, I was not really tracking my reading well in 2016, so I can't really tell you guys that. But what we can talk about today are the books that were published in 2016 that I've read and that I've enjoyed and that would still recommend to you guys, even though they're 10 years old, they're still great books I think we should be picking up. And then I think it would be fun at the end to talk about the books on my TBR that are from 2016. Like they were published in 2016 is what I should say. Hopefully that's clear what I'm trying to say. This is just going to be a very chatty, casual sit down video. I thought this would be fun to do as to look back on 2016 and also to look at as I look at the TBR to see if maybe at some point during this year I will do like a reading vlog, reading some of the books that I talk about that are on my TBR that were published in 2016. So we can see if they are still worth the read or not. So first up, I am on Storygraph here, and I've brought up all of the books that I read in my lifetime that were published in 2016. Can you guess how many there are? I would have not had any idea until I looked this up. There are 53 books that I've read over the past 10 years that were from 2016, that were published in 2016. I think that was interesting. So on average, how many is that a year? Like 5? On average, I've read about 5 books from 2016 each year over the past 10 years. And so I'm not going to tell you guys each of these 53 books. We'll be here all day. But I wanted to highlight some of the ones that I think I still have strong feelings towards that I really enjoyed. This is going to be kind of like a very informal recommendation video. I don't have any notes or anything prepared. We're just going to go off the cuff here and see which of these I still remember. Some of them I could have read within the past year still. Some of them I could have read back in 2016. Okay, last year I did listen to A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the ACOTAR series. I listened to it last year, but this was published in 2016, obviously. I haven't since then continued on with the series. This is a series I'm like lightly reading just here and there. But yeah, this would have been a big book, I'm sure, in 2016 when it came out. 2016, the final book in the Fate of the Tearling, the final book in the Queen of the Tearling series by Erica Johansson came out. I did read this whole series back to back. I remember back in 2021, and I enjoyed it. But I don't know if I would really enjoy it as much reading it now. I don't know. Okay, this one's my first official recommendation. We were just chatting about those other books. The Return, Father, Sons, and the Land in Between by Hisham Matar. This book is a nonfiction memoir, and I gave this one a 5-star rating. I remember I really loved this book. Since then, I haven't picked up anything else by this author, but I do have another of his books on my TBR that I really want to get to. That was published more recently. The 4th book in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series was published in 2016 by Marie Brennan. I really love this fantasy, very low fantasy series, and I really want to reread it again at some point in the future. I did order a special edition off of Kickstarter. I forget who the publisher is now that's publishing the special bind up, but I will be getting that at some point this year, and I'm really excited for that one because not only is it a beautiful edition, I'm really excited to reread this series at some point and see if I enjoy it just as much as I did when I first read it. 2016, the second book in N.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth trilogy came out, The Obelisk Gate. This is another 5-star read for me. I cannot wait to reread this series again. I also have since then purchased a really nice special edition set of this series, and I think this series is also getting an adaptation for the screen. Not sure how official that is, but I'm really excited. This is a very fun science fiction fantasy series that I will definitely be rereading. I read this back in 2020 during the pandemic, and this was definitely a good series to read to pass the time of that crazy time. Okay, Behind Closed Doors. I remember listening to this by B.A. Paris on an audiobook, And to this day, this is like one of the audiobooks that I most recommend to people. I just remember reading this book and having such strong, intense feelings at the thrillery parts of this book. And I really want my husband to read this. I got the audiobook for him, so he'll hopefully pick it up soon, because I heard this is getting an adaptation as well. And I also heard that this book is getting a sequel. So that means I'm going to have to reread this book soon. 2016 was the year that Jane Harper released the first book in her Aaron Falk series, The Dry. I really enjoyed the series. Since it's been finished since then, I think it ended up being a trilogy. Of course, now is when they decide to blow all the leaves outside. So if you guys can hear the leaf blower, I'm sorry. Nothing I can do about that in this moment. Okay, so I was talking about The Dry. So yeah, that series I really enjoyed. I'd recommend that to you guys. The first in another series was also published that year, and that was Scythe by Neil Shusterman, the first book in the Arc of a Scythe series, which is like a young adult dystopian science fiction series that I really enjoyed. I didn't realize the first one came out that long ago. This one was supposed to get an adaptation, I believe, but I don't think anything ever came of it. The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead was published that year. That one was a really good book, and I really love Colson Whitehead's writing. I have since then picked up, I think The Nickel Boys was published after that book, but ever since then, any other books I've picked up from him, I haven't really had the best time with. So I don't know if it's just going to be those two books for me that I enjoyed from Colson Whitehead, but I would recommend those. Another one that was a 5-star rating for me that year was Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood by Trevor Noah. I definitely was not reading a lot of nonfiction that around the time that I read this book, which is I read this one in 2018. But this one kind of was one of like my gateway books, I guess, into nonfiction books. I remember I really enjoyed this memoir. Another 5-star read was Homegoing by Yazi. This was a thick book, but so good. I read this one a couple years after it came out in 2018, I believe. And I really enjoyed this book. It solidified my love for multi-generational family sagas. And it's a book that I'm definitely looking forward to revisiting again at some point in the future. Now, after going through this list, I feel like I want to reread so many books. I am not even going to want to get to the TBR part. I just want to reread books that were published in 2016. The Sun is Also a Star. That one is a very nostalgic book for me. I really used to ride hard for Nicola Yoon's books back when I did read a lot more young adult fiction. I mean, back in 2016, I was definitely in the young adult age range. I read more young adult books. In 2016, I was 20, 21, 22, something like that. I'm not gonna tell you guys my exact age, but you get the gist. Funnily enough, in 2016, The Woman in Cabin 10 was published by Ruth Ware, and it's funny because I just mentioned the sequel to this book in my last video. If you guys seen the worst books I read over the past year, made it onto my list, and now looking back, I've read so many more mystery thriller books. I don't know if I were to read this for the first time now, if it would give me as much enjoyment as it did when I read this one. Another young adult contemporary book that I liked, I was really, when I was reading young adult books, drawn towards young adult books that were contemporary, hard-hitting, more emotionally driven stories, and Girl in Pieces by Kathleen Glasgow I really enjoyed. I really enjoy Kathleen Glasgow in general as a writer. I have one other of her books on my shelves I just purchased recently, and I have at least another one or two on my TBR, and so I am going to eventually pick up more of her books. And like I said, I don't pick up a lot of young adult books. If it's from an author that has proven that I've enjoyed their books in the past multiple times, then I'm definitely more open to picking up a young adult book. So those are all of the books that were published in 2016 that I wanted to recommend to you guys. Now I'm going to go ahead and look at my TBR, and we'll actually go through all of those. So I don't think there's actually that many that are from 2016 that are still on my TBR. Okay, I was right. So there are 12 books that are on my TBR that are published in 2016. And that is a very, very insignificant portion of my TBR. Just to give you guys some context, currently on my Storygraph TBR, there are 616 books. 12 of those are from 2016. So as you can see, I was not really keeping up with new releases and stuff around that time. Like, this was definitely still in the early days of me being aware of any kind of book community online. So I'm just going to run through what these 12 books are. I'm still definitely interested in reading all of these, and you guys can let me know if you've read them, or if you haven't, which one, even if you have, which ones you think I should prioritize. So first up, we have a nonfiction book, and that is Game of Queens, The Women Who Made 16th Century Europe by Sarah Gristwood. When I pick up nonfiction books, they tend to be more of like history. Specifically, I like to read stories about either women's history or racial history. Those are usually the categories that I'm most drawn towards. There are a couple of nonfiction books on this list. Okay, so the next book is the first in a series, and it's not nonfiction. This one's a historical fiction series. It's called the Six Tudor Queens series. This is book number 1, was published in 2016, Catherine of Aragon, The True Queen by Alison Ware. There's at least 6 books and maybe even some novellas and stuff as well in this series. This one would be a big commitment to picking up. I'm probably not going to pick it up soon just because there are a lot of books in this series. I don't really want to commit to that big of a project right now, but I am still interested in picking this one up. The first one, like I said, is Catherine of Aragon, and this one is following her. So the whole premise of this series is each book is following one of the women who was married to King Henry VIII. So it's following the 6 different wives. So that's why it's called Six Tudor Queens. Okay, next is Almond by Won Pyung-sun, and Sandy Jusen Lee is the translator on this one. And this book is following Yoon-jae, who's born with a brain condition called alexithymia, and it makes it hard for him to feel emotions like fear or anger. It's a story about love, friendship, and persistence. This one is a contemporary book on the emotional side, literary side. Definitely sounds exactly up my alley. I've seen this book in person, and I feel like I've seen like small little pocket versions of this book. I think it'd be really cute to buy one of these little ones. Next time I see it around, so I'll have to keep an eye out for that. Next is one I have not heard of since whenever I added this to my TBR, and it's called Here, the World Entire by Onwen Kya Hayward. This book is only 83 pages, so I'm definitely going to check it out and see if it's interesting or not. It's very short. I'll have to see if maybe I can get it from my library or something. But it does have to do with Greek mythology. It's following... this one is a Medusa retelling. Very short, so I'm definitely still interested in trying this one out. It's a fantasy book. On Storygraph, it's described as emotional and reflective. Okay, next we have August Town, one I also haven't really heard anybody talking about since, and that is by Kai Miller. This book is a historical book and also has some magical realism in it. It's set in the underbelly of Jamaica. We're following Ma Taffy, who may be blind, but she sees everything. And when her great nephew Kaya comes home from school in tears, what she senses sends a deep fear running through her. We have another nonfiction book, and this book is actually on my TBR for this month. But I don't know if I'm going to get to it because I'm currently reading Frederick Douglass, the biography right now. And that book is such a big chunky book. It might just take me until the end of the month. We'll see. But if I do happen to finish it before the end of the month, this book is the next one that I want to pick up, and it's called Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram X. Kendi. This one is still definitely right up my alley, one that has been sitting on my shelves for far too long, and I definitely need to get to this one. Next, we have a book I've only heard good things about as well. I feel like for a while this book had a resurgence online. I was seeing it in a lot of people's radars, and now maybe I'll pick it up this year for myself. It's called Kim Ji-young, born 1982. By Cho Namju, with Jamie Chang as the translator. This book is not too long. It's like under 200 pages. It's a contemporary literary book. It's following one woman's psychic deterioration in the face of rampant misogyny. In a tidy apartment on the outskirts of Seoul, millennial every woman Kim Ji-young spends her days caring for her infant daughter. But strange symptoms start appearing. Okay, I don't want to read too much into that one and spoil myself on the plot because I am still definitely very interested in reading that one. Okay, next we have Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. Now, this book is getting a special 10th year anniversary special edition is being published this year, and it's definitely on my radar. I'm going to order that. I haven't yet, but at some point I will. I don't think I read any Blake Crouch yet. Actually, I take that back. I did read the first book in the Pine series, but I never continued on with it. But I've heard really good things about this book, and it's a science fiction thriller. And I believe this book is also getting an adaptation as well as like a movie or show. I can't remember which. We're following this man who a masked abductor knocks him unconscious, and before he wakens to find himself strapped to a gurney, surrounded by strangers in hazmat suits. Before a man Jason's never met smiles down at him and says, "Welcome back, my friend." In this world he's woken up to, Jason's life is not the one he knows. His wife is not his wife. His son was never born. He's not an ordinary college physics professor, but a celebrated genius who's achieved something remarkable. I don't want to read further into the plot because I like to go into my books not knowing too much. And for sure, that is going to be on my TBR for this year. Next, we have What Is Not Yours Is Not Yours by Helen Oyeyemi. I haven't picked up any books by this author yet, but her one she published last year is still on my TBR, A New Me, as well as Gingerbread, which came out in 2019. That one's also on my TBR still. In this book, it's a tale that spans multiple times and landscapes. This book falls into the magical realism genre. It looks like this is a potentially short story collection. Next is Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeline Thine. This one's a historical literary fiction book. We are following an extended family in China, seeing the lives of two successive generations, those who lived through Mao's Cultural Revolution and their children who become the students protesting in Tiananmen Square. This next one is also on my shelves, and it's sad because it's been on my shelves for way too long. It's under 200 pages. I have no reason to not have read this book. It's called Eventide by Therese Bowman, translated by Marlene Delargy. There's actually a lot of books on this list now. I'm just realizing that were books in translation. This is a contemporary literary novel following a woman in her 40s who's childless and living alone and adrift after the breakup of a long relationship. She's an art history professor and finds fulfillment in her work, and then she starts advising a new postgraduate student she's struck by his confidence. He claims to have discovered new materials from a female artist working around 1800 that could change the history of Swedish visual arts. This book I've been a little bit hesitant on because I've read some not too favorable reviews on this book, and I think that kind of was one of the reasons why I ended up kind of putting it to the sidelines after I bought it. And then last but not least, we have a very small nonfiction novella, I guess. This is called The Middle Ages, A History from Beginning to End by Henry Freeman. It's only 50 pages. I think I actually have an ebook copy of this on my phone somewhere. But this is just a very short history of the medieval ages. As I mentioned before, really do love history, and I want to learn and continue to learn more about history. So I am very much interested in like the Middle Ages, Renaissance time, all that stuff to me is very fascinating, interesting. I guess because it's just so different than our modern world and the modern times that we live in, but it's not so far in ancient history that it's not at all like relatable. But yeah, those are all of the books that are still on my TBR that were published in 2016. I thought it was very fun to go down this kind of time capsule, time travel video. We traveled together back to 2016, and no surprise there were some really good books that were published in 2016 that I very much enjoy. There were a lot of 5-star books. There's still books that were published in 2016 that I feel like are still worthy to be read and are still on my TBR. So let me know if you guys want me to prioritize any of these books that I just mentioned during this year. Let me know if there's any books I didn't mention that were published in 2016, if you happen to know that you would recommend to me and you think I should add to my TBR. That's it for today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!